Hello, welcome to the M.O.W. channel. Today, we'll take a closer look at the Gilgo Beach serial murders in the United States. Let's delve into the mysteries and traces of the serial murders that terrorized the city. Please like and subscribe to support us. Now, let's delve into the story carefully. A missing person and the discovery of bodies. In 2010, the first ominous signs appeared on the quiet shores near Gilgo Beach. A missing person report shook the peaceful seaside community. 23-year-old Shannon Gilbert disappeared after leaving a client's home in Oak Beach. Her last words on a desperate 911 call were brief, "Someone's after me." After that moment, all traces of her vanished. Police immediately began a search, but from day one, they found no significant clues. A few weeks later, the first body was discovered near Gilgo Beach. Tightly bound with a belt and tape and wrapped in burlap, the body wasn't found by chance on an ordinary street but was meticulously concealed. The subsequent discovery of additional bodies suggested the case wasn't just a simple accident, but a potential series of murders. Investigators initially classified it as a simple crime, but as they identified commonalities and similar methods of disposal among the bodies, they gradually concluded that the same killer was responsible. The victims were all young women in their early 20s: Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthelemy, Amberlynn Costello, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes. They were all marginalized individuals, most of whom made a living through online sex work. Investigators meticulously looked into the victims' backgrounds, but clues connecting their lives to the crimes were limited. The Gilgo Beach serial killings were more than just a crime story. They became a sinister event that put the entire community on edge. The dark shadow hidden beneath the peaceful coastal scenery was now a reality that no one could ignore. In the initial investigation, eyewitness accounts were limited, there was little physical evidence, and the victims' lives were buried in traces that had already disappeared. Yet, in the midst of this quiet terror, investigators continued their persistent efforts to find clues. The pattern and method of the body's disposal revealed the killer's cruelty and meticulous planning. The victims were all tightly bound with burlap, belts, and tape, and some bodies showed signs of intentionally concealed body parts. This suggested the killer didn't act on impulse. In the early stages of the case, investigators tried to understand the killer's psychology and motives, but limited evidence and the victims' backgrounds made significant progress difficult. Meanwhile, the local community was gripped by fear and anxiety. Residents became reluctant to visit the beach, and the media provided detailed coverage of the victims' lives and the horror of the case. The peace of Gilgo Beach was shattered, and the case became not just a crime, but a subject for sociological study and criminal psychology. The victims' families were devastated by the news of their daughters' disappearances and brutal deaths. They began using media interviews to tell their daughters' stories and demand justice. Challenges in the investigation and securing clues. For years after the initial incident, The Gilgo Beach serial killings remained an unsolved mystery. The victims' bodies were meticulously handled, and the killer acted carefully to leave no trace, which put a tremendous burden on investigators. In the initial phase, the police and profilers dedicated to the case were limited by a lack of clues. The fact that the victims were sex workers, combined with social prejudice, led to the crimes being dismissed as simple offenses, hindering a clear understanding of the true nature of the murders. The investigation stagnated for a long time. There were few witnesses, and no crucial evidence like DNA, fingerprints, or vehicle tracks was found at the scenes to identify a suspect. The victims' families could only wait in frustration, while investigators struggled daily, analyzing case files and crime scene photos for any lead. They also analyzed the killer's patterns and thoroughly investigated the victim's activities, both in person and online, to prepare for the possibility that he might act again. Then, in 2022, the case took a new turn. A witness came forward to the police, reporting that a vehicle belonging to a woman, who went missing in 2010 matched one driven by Rex Heuermann. After a long decade, this witness's testimony, pulling a crucial clue from a long-ago memory, gave the investigative team new hope. Investigators immediately began tracking Heuermann's movements, meticulously examining information about his associates, residence, and workplace. During the investigation, the team secured digital clues. Call records between the victims and Heuermann were analyzed, and searches for sadomasochistic pornographic videos and photos of the victims were found in a pseudonym email account Heuermann had used. These digital footprints were not just simple traces. They had the potential to be decisive evidence linking him to the crimes. Based on this data, investigators analyzed the outlines of Heuermann's criminal habits, interests, and plans. The work of the investigators was physically and mentally taxing. They had to repeatedly review photos of the victims and evidence for long periods, confronting the killer's brutality firsthand. The team strengthened their cooperation and used a combination of scientific analysis and traditional investigative techniques. Various methods were employed, including DNA analysis, vehicle tracking, and communication record reviews. But the killer's meticulous planning and the passage of time remained significant hurdles. At this point, the social significance of the case also expanded. As the presence of a serial killer was confirmed, the community was swept with fear, and the media provided detailed reports on the victims' identities and the full scope of the case. Despite their grief over losing their daughters and sisters, the victims' families never stopped trying to reveal the truth. Through interviews, they raised awareness about the brutality of the crimes and the need to protect marginalized individuals, raising their voices to demand justice. Despite the investigative challenges, investigators focused on every small detail. Analysis of vehicle tracking, phone records, digital data, and witness testimonies continued until all the information connected. Although the case had been cold for a long time, the witness testimony and digital evidence in 2022 provided new leads, changing the course of the investigation. a critical clue on a pizza crust. The Gilgo Beach serial murder investigation was in a state of near deadlock. For years, beginning in early 2010, the victims' bodies were thoroughly concealed, and the killer acted meticulously to leave no trace. Investigators tried to find clues by analyzing the crime scenes and the victims' lives, but no decisive evidence was found. However, in January 2023, the case took an unexpected turn. Near an office in Manhattan, investigators found a pizza box that Heuermann had discarded. Inside the box was a leftover pizza crust. It was initially dismissed as simple trash, but the investigative team had a gut feeling that this ordinary piece of food might hold a clue. The killer had been extremely cunning, but this incident revealed that he couldn't completely erase the small habits and daily traces that every human leaves behind. DNA testing of the pizza crust yielded shocking results for the investigation team. The DNA found on the crust matched the male hair DNA found on the victims' bodies. At that moment, investigators realized the true nature of the serial murders was right in front of them. The case, which had remained a cold case for years, had reached a turning point thanks to a single clue. This discovery was a moment of both crisis and hope for the investigators. They now had the crucial evidence needed to identify the killer. The DNA analysis results were strong enough to be admitted as evidence in court, and became the key material needed to arrest and prosecute the killer. The investigation team immediately began to track Heuermann's daily life and movements. They analyzed every trace: his workplace, home, vehicle, and call records to reconstruct his daily routine. Heuermann had maintained a seemingly peaceful life as a normal architectural consultant, but this clue revealed the hidden side of his double life. Investigators could now see both the killer's meticulous planning and cruelty, as well as the traces of crime that showed through his ordinary routine. Throughout the case's development, investigators had to manage evidence meticulously under great tension and pressure. A single mistake could have invalidated the crucial evidence. While a small clue like a pizza crust changed the course of the case, more analysis and evidence were needed to use it as the basis for the killer's arrest. Heuermann's digital footprint also came back into focus at this time. Traces of contact with the victims, records of searches for sadistic content, and the existence of photos of the victims were found in his pseudonym, email account and call records, providing a clearer understanding of the killer's psychology and behavioral patterns. With this new information, the investigative team re-evaluated the serial killings, which were initially classified as simple missing person cases, as premeditated and meticulously executed crimes. The social repercussions also spread again. The fact that the killer's outline was revealed by a small clue, despite the case being cold for years, shocked the media and local community. For the first time, the victims' families felt the possibility of the case being solved after their long wait, experiencing a moment where hope and tension intertwined. Arrest and progress in the investigation. In July 2024, after a long 14 years, the Gilgo Beach serial murder case finally reached its turning point. After the DNA from the pizza crust was matched to Heuermann, investigators meticulously re-examined the scenes and evidence. The investigative team immediately cordoned off Heuermann's home, workplace, and the surrounding areas to prepare for his arrest. Heuermann's home was in a quiet residential neighborhood outside of Manhattan. On the outside, it looked like any ordinary building, but to the investigators, it held secrets. As police entered, they found architectural documents and models neatly arranged in the living room, and the house was meticulously clean. However, a shocking discovery was made as investigators searched every corner. In a living room drawer, they found individual bags containing victims' earrings and hair, and in a nearby room, there were about 200 firearms neatly organized. Suffolk County Police investigator Michael Anderson recalled the moment, saying, "When we first went in, contrary to the impression of a typical working professional's home, there was clear criminal evidence piled up. Seeing the victims' belongings so neatly organized, I could feel the killer's meticulousness and, at the same time, his cruelty." Additional evidence was found at Heuermann's office. His architectural firm provided contact records with the victims, printed materials, and digital storage devices. In his email accounts and on his computer, investigators found sadistic videos and photos of the victims. They systematically collected the evidence, documenting every step to ensure it could be used in court. Upon his arrest, Heuermann was remarkably calm. Investigators could sense a chilling composure in his eyes and on his face. His calmness shocked his neighbors and family. One neighbor said in an interview, "Rex was always a kind and quiet person. I couldn't believe it when I saw him being arrested so calmly. It was a shock to find out that the person we knew had committed such a horrific crime." Immediately after the arrest, the investigative team reconstructed Heuermann's criminal timeline. They meticulously analyzed his contact with the victims, his preparations for the crimes, and his methods of concealing evidence. Although he had thoroughly erased digital records and tried to minimize traces of the victims, the combination of DNA, digital records, and physical evidence revealed the overall pattern of the crimes. Based on this information, investigators prepared a systematic report and gathered all the necessary materials for the court. Throughout this process, the investigators' psychological tension was at its peak. The brutality of the crimes and the killer's meticulousness put a great strain on the team. Still, the fact that a successful outcome was within reach was a major source of motivation. Suffolk County District Attorney Andrew Lee stated, "We have worked day and night for years to solve this case. Now, the clues have clearly revealed the killer's identity. Our efforts will bear fruit." The evidence obtained after the arrest served as crucial material that directly linked Heuermann to the crimes. The victim's earrings and hair, firearms, and digital records all connected, allowing the entire case to be reconstructed. The stark contrast between Heuermann's methods and his seemingly normal everyday life, his double life, was also revealed. The extreme juxtaposition between his appearance as an ordinary architectural consultant and the cruelty of his crimes doubled the shock of the case. The arrest sent shockwaves through the local community and the national media. The residents of Gilgo Beach felt a sense of relief after years of anxiety, but couldn't hide their shock at the brutality of the crimes. After a long wait, the victims' families finally saw justice on the horizon, feeling a complex mix of sadness and relief. justice is served, and society reflects. With Rex Heuermann's arrest and the securing of crucial evidence, the Gilgo Beach serial murder case finally found a path to resolution. What had been a long, cold case for years came to fruition through a combination of scientific investigation, relentless persistence, and community cooperation. Suffolk County District Attorney Andrew Lee, who played a key role in the investigation and prosecution, was promoted to Chief District Attorney. He said in an interview, "This isn't just a crime case, it's the result of combining our investigative capabilities, scientific techniques, and unyielding perseverance. Our top priority was to bring justice to the victims and their families. The evidence obtained during the arrest and investigation became the crucial link to the killer, allowing investigators to reconstruct the full scope of the case. Everything from Heuermann's home and workplace to his digital records, firearms, and the victim's personal belongings served as proof of his crimes and his premeditated planning. Based on this, investigators systematically documented the case to build a solid foundation for a successful prosecution in court. The emotions of the victims' families were complex. After years of living with grief and anxiety, they finally felt the possibility of justice being served, experiencing a mix of relief and shock. The mother of Megan Gilbert said with tears in her eyes in an interview, "It was a long wait, but the fact that justice is finally being served in my daughter's name gives us some comfort." However, the loss and pain from all these years will never go away. The Heuermann case was more than just catching a killer. It underscored the importance of a scientific approach and digital forensics in serial murder investigations. DNA analysis, communication record reviews, and digital footprint analysis were all key to solving the case. This has set a new standard for how police and prosecutors can handle future serial crime investigations. Even after the case was solved, the Gilgo Beach community began its recovery with deep shock. Residents felt relieved after years of anxiety, but they also reflected on the social messages left by the case. The existence of a serial killer was not just an object of fear, but an opportunity to raise awareness about the need to protect marginalized people, strengthen community safety nets, and prevent crime. One investigator said in an interview, "Solving this case taught me how important every clue, every collaboration, and every bit of persistent analysis is. When science and human intuition come together, even cold cases can eventually be solved." Heuermann's arrest and the resolution of the case were broadcast nationwide, bringing a renewed focus on the social impact of serial murders. Experts use this case as an example to highlight the importance of criminal psychology, protecting vulnerable populations, and scientific investigative techniques. The memories of the victims remain on the shores of Gilgo Beach today. Their lives and pain were brought to light through the case, and as justice was served, their stories gained even greater social significance. The documentary leaves its audience with the following messages. A single small clue can change the course of a case. Scientific analysis and the persistent efforts of investigators can solve even the coldest cases. Justice, no matter how long it takes, can be served and provide meaningful closure to society and families. Gilgo Beach serial murders. The truth finally revealed. Remember the victims. Join us again for the next story. Don't forget to subscribe and like.